that I share with clients in my network. So great to see you all. Thanks for joining me today. So let's talk about today's topic. We're going to talk about the sales question playbook. So really some ideas around the optimal types of questions that you can start to ask in sales conversations with customers. And we'll talk a bit about why that's important as a frame of reference as well. Those of you who have been on these calls before will know that these are thinking spaces. So with the busyness of day-to-day life and work and all the other stuff that goes on, emails, direct messages, and you know as well as I do, we struggle to find thinking spaces. A lot of evidence that shows thinking space is one thing that's missing in most people's lives right now. The idea of this session is to give you an hour or 50 minutes or so of clear thinking space. That's why we're here today. So today we're going to talk about, let me just go back a slide. We're going to talk about a few things relating to the sales question playbook. We are going to cover the customer journey and the sales process and where questions fit, because I often think if you don't do the context of something, and we just talk about questions, if you don't think about where that fits more broadly in the customer journey and the sales process, it can leave you feeling a little bit kind of disconnected. So we want to connect the two things together. I want to talk about question structure. Some of you might have seen that before. It's always a good reminder. And then I want to talk about the difference between normal questions and high quality questions, and a link there to questions that we ask that either help the customer identify a problem or a solution. And should we do one or the other, or should we do both? And I've got a little bit of interesting research that I want to share with you on problem or solution questions. And then once we've gone through that content, I think that'll take us 20, 25 minutes. Then I'm going to invite you to go to breakout rooms. I'm going to try and mix up the group so that you're with somebody new and give you a chance just to have a conversation about what you've heard in the session and capture kind of key changes or actions that you might need to take, whether that be for you or for the teams that you work with in your business. And then I run this Inspire Sales training program. Some of you on the line actually are on it, which is great. So thank you for joining us. And I'll share what the program is with those people who perhaps haven't seen it before. So that's the plan for today. And the target time to finish is 5 to 2. So I know most people have got a 2 o'clock. I have a 2 o'clock. It's called lunch. So I've got 2 o'clock lunch appointment with myself. So I'll make sure we're finished by 5 to 2 so that you've got 5 minutes before this ends and your next 2 o'clock. So I think most of you, I'm just looking, maybe a couple of you that have not seen me before. So just a bit of background. This year marks the year that I've been in sales for 32 years. I know what you're thinking. He must have started at school. I wish that were true. 32 years in sales this year. And throughout my career in sales, I worked in lots of different businesses, lots of different marketplaces. I've been not only a salesperson, but I've been a sales manager. I've been a business manager. Some of you will know that from working with me, Lee and Kirsty. And what I did about 8 years ago, I kind of got to probably for me, a ceiling in my corporate career. And I thought I'd like to make a change and do something different. So I took the plunge, retrained as an executive coach, left the corporate world and started to build my own business. And thankfully for me, that seems to have gone quite well. One of the things that I hadn't appreciated when I made that decision was just how valuable a lot of the structure and the resources and the training and development I'd had over the 25 years in corporate sales, how valuable that was to businesses where perhaps that structure and that development hasn't been in place. So that's a lot of what I do, is helping actually get foundational principles for sales effectiveness into businesses. And you'll start to see some of that today. Those of you who work with me on our program will know that that's what we're doing month in, month out in our open program. But what I found that's really interesting for me personally, and now for clients that I work with, is it's really easy to drift off track, for inconsistencies to set in, for negativity to seep in. And that impacts performance and results, and actually getting back to some of the simple things like re-engaging yourself and your teams, starting to think about what does performance look like, what are the leading performance metrics, getting those in place, getting consistency around that, then the results come. And when I explain it, it always sounds obvious, but it's surprising how many businesses just lose sight of those foundational principles and getting back to those foundations to make sure that growth is established. So that's the kind of background to me. I'll share a couple of things with you that I find fascinating. I shared this yesterday on our sales mastermind call, actually. 87% of customers, 87, nearly 9 out of 10 customers believe a salesperson isn't able to understand their real needs. Doesn't mean the salesperson can't come in and have a conversation that's informed, that might educate the customer, but the customer's saying, yeah, but what I really need, they don't get it. And that 87% of customers. And it's a combination of not listening, which we covered in our last month's session that we did, an open session. If you want access to that, let me know. I'll happily share with you the recording. And it's a combination of, are they asking the right questions? And we'll talk about that today. And then the reason this is such a gap, I believe, is because of this other statistic, which is that 55% of professional salespeople in B2B companies have never been trained to sell. They're trained on the market, they're trained on the customer, they're trained on the products, the business, but they're not trained to actually go through a sales process that gives them the foundations to perform and deliver results. And that's a huge gap. I see that day in, day out with the conversations I have with clients that I work with teams that I've led in the past as well. So I'm trying to fix that as part of this session. So we're gonna get you some useful insights today. I want to start with the customer journey. I talked about context for questions. So years ago, I saw this visual of a reversed funnel. It really landed with me. So I've adopted it and use it as my own. And basically, when we start looking at sales, we always think about the funnel as being a funnel that goes from top to bottom, wider at the top, narrow at the bottom, and it filters out customers. It makes an inherent assumption that's incorrect. That assumption is that gravity pulls customers down through the funnel. It doesn't work like that in sales. In sales, we are continuously having to draw customers up through the funnel. If we don't pull customers along, if we don't secure the next meeting, if we're not in control of the next steps, then customers drop back out of the funnel. They don't pull themselves through it. So I always invert the funnel so that it's a reminder to us that gravity acts against us in the sales process. With that in mind, as I animate this slide, on the left-hand side, we're going to see the decision stages of the customer. On the right-hand side, we're going to see the steps of the sales process that's proven to draw customers up through those decision stages. And the process is from the book, Inspire, Influence, Sell. So customer starts their journey with you unaware, normally unaware of the value that can be created. They might know a bit about your business or the products that you're talking to them about or solutions you're talking to them about, but they'll be unaware of the true value. And what we have to do is make sure that we've got the right preparation in place, that you have mapped out your value proposition, that you understand all your case studies, all of the things about the market and the relevance that you create, ROI models, all that stuff. Get all that preparation ready. Once you're prepared, you can start to put signals out to customers. That's what we're looking for, signals that allow the customer to buy in the early stages. And in that first stage of buying, we get the customer's attention. So someone goes from unaware to you've got my attention. And once you've got a customer's attention, what we have to do then is share further insight. So we need to share things with the customer that they don't know today. That might be things about their business, it might be things about the marketplace, it might be things about other customers like them, it might be things about opportunities that are coming down the line that they don't have visibility of, because a lot of customers are siloed in their own business. And those insights, when we share the insights to a customer that's attentive, they move the customer to interested. Now, when a customer's interested, you'll visually see the sign. They kind of lean in to the sales conversation. And that leaning in is a bit of a trap, because if at that point you mistake that interest for something else like desire or action, then you're tempted to start pitching your solution. And actually, the next stage after interested for the client, in order to get a customer or a client from interested to the next stage, you have to start to ask them questions about their needs. Because when you ask them questions about their needs, and that's what we'll cover today, you get them to start to process their information differently. They start to think about what they're doing, what they're missing. They start to think about the problems that they've got, and then so once they've got this kind of internal narrative, and you're helping them to manage that internal narrative, they move themselves from interested to desire. And once you've got someone that's in a state of desire, like I want to know more, I want to change now, I want to put in a change, that's when we present a solution, and not before. And one of the biggest mistakes I made early in my sales career, and actually I would like to say once I'd learned this principle, I didn't repeat it, but I would be lying if I said that. It's a real temptation when you know your product and you know your business really well to jump to solution too early in the conversation with the customer. And if we jump to solution too early, you have a customer that just says something like, I'm not sure it's right, let me think about it. And if you're getting that, it's because you haven't really helped them to process their needs and move through these stages. Now, even when you present a solution to a customer, that what you want to do is, it's not enough for them to just want to change. We have to get them to do something. In order to get them to do something, we have to pivot from being consultative, asking questions and matching solutions to needs, to making proposals and starting to lead the conversation. And that's one of the other big mistakes I see with people that I've worked with. I've made the mistake myself, where you kind of get to a solution, the customer seems really fired up, and you go, what do you want to do next then? Right? The customer doesn't want to decide for themselves what to do next. They want you to demonstrate leadership. So you make proposals and say, here's how we can get you the very best result based on what we've talked about so far. You start to lead the customer. And then once you've got the customer ready to take action, we want them to then say, yeah, I'll place an order, or we've got, commitment to do something that creates transactions. We have to, even when you've led a proposal, that's not enough. We have to make sure that we've got some form of urgency or immediacy created, and then we take control of driving the next steps. We engage the customer, book that next meeting, and then we create momentum. If we miss any of these different steps, we don't get the final commitment from the customer, and that leaves them and us adrift. And then ultimately, I always think about beyond just customers. We want clients. The difference for me between customer and client: customer's transactional. They'll look around, they're buying on price. A client says, I'm committed to this brand, to this person, and I see true partnership and larger value beyond just the product that I'm selling. We do that through a process of review, feedback, reflection, and improvement. So we're really thinking beyond just transactional sales here. So that's the customer journey. They are the stages of this kind of sales process. Now that looks linear. Sales isn't linear. Sales are cyclical. So we think about sales in cycles. So you see this cycle for the steps on the right-hand side. So we've got the preparation, make sure that you know your market, your customer, your proposition. Make sure that in the heart of the model, there's always a relationship established. So we should always have a positive relationship with a customer, because customers won't buy from people they don't like. They just won't. They'll resist if they don't like you. So we have to create likability. There's things we can do about that. We lead with insight, then we discover their needs. And I really want to kind of zoom in on needs today. That's the idea of today. So how do we understand someone's needs? There's only one way to truly do it. That is to be interested in the other person and park your own agenda to a certain degree at this stage of the process, to ask open questions so the customer can expand and process their thinking, and of course to listen carefully. And listen carefully is last on that list. I'd say it should be first on that list, but we won't cover it today. As I said, we covered this in a previous webinar about a month ago. If you want access to that webinar, let me know, because listening is a skill that has to be developed. It doesn't, believe it or not, it doesn't come naturally to most people. So we have to cultivate listening as a skill. But let's assume we're going to listen carefully and we understand how to do that. Then it's about the types of questions that we ask. And when I first started work as a sales manager back in 2002/3, so it's about 20 odd years ago, one of the things that I very quickly noticed when I was working in the field, and I was field-based, 4 or 5 days a week, depending on the week, and I was co-traveling with salespeople every day, for weeks, months, for years. Did that for years. Really enjoyed it. One of the things that I discovered time and time again is that salespeople, and not just salespeople, most people in general ask open questions. Now, when you start to become a coach or you're a manager and you're coaching sales teams, you start to see things that they don't see. The same way that, I work with a coach, he sees things I don't see. That's exactly the benefit of working with a coach or someone that, is an expert in the field. And what I noticed was that most people default to closed questions. They don't even realize they're doing it. And I would go into sales calls with one of my team and they'd start a conversation with a customer, conversation, they'd do the rapport, and then they'd go, have you been thinking about this since we last met? Have you been thinking about what we talked about last time? The customer would go, not really, because I've just been really busy and so this stuff's been going on. And they go, all right, okay. Is it something you want to pick up again today? And they go, well, I'm not sure. It doesn't really, I can't really remember what we talked about last time. And they'd go closed question after closed question after closed question after closed question. And then we'd come out of the meetings and I'd say, so what do you think happened there then? They go, oh, that customer's clearly, having a bad day. They shut me down. They wouldn't answer any of my questions. And so I'd say, so what questions did you ask? And they couldn't recite the question because they couldn't remember. They'd say, well, I asked them, how were things? I asked them, what are they looking at? And it's interesting, there was this huge blind spot around questions. Now, closed questions, as you know, will elicit a yes or a no answer. And unless we know the difference in the types of questions we ask, we end up asking the wrong questions and creating a barrier to the information we get from customers without realizing it. And as I say, I see this time and time and time again. I've seen it in the past. I see it again now. And I find that even I have to really check my questions. I'm constantly remembering what I'm going to share with you in a moment, which is a technique for remembering how to ask the right type of questions. So there are 3 types of questions. We won't talk about closed questions today because they come naturally to everybody. Okay, closed questions can be answered yes or no, and you will find you ask more closed questions than open questions. Although I've got a funny story about that, which I'll tell you in a moment. And then open questions are questions that get people talking, but we have to know how to structure open questions to get that in place. And then the 3rd type of question is a probing question. Now, what that means is that once you've asked one question, maybe it's open, maybe it's closed, and you haven't got the information you want, then we ask a probing question to get below the surface. Because very often customers will just present to us or feedback to us like surface level stuff. Yeah, we've got this problem with X, right? And you all know problems are always upstream from where the customer thinks the problem is. Customers are always further upstream. The way we get to the upstream problem is to probe. So the customer goes deeper and works backwards. So I want to talk to you about a couple of principles that are really useful in terms of the playbook for questions that helps remember open questions. So the best way to remember to ask an open question is to remember what or how. So if your question is structured to start with what or how, you will almost guarantee that you'll ask an open question. So instead of, have you had a chance to look at this? What did you think when you reviewed this? Or what did you think when you looked at this? And instead of, is this something you look at today? So what's the best way for us to review this today? Right. So you just literally switch the first question and then just change the structure of the sentence. You can ask the same question. You can open it up rather than close it down. So what and how? And when you retrain yourself, so when I first learned this principle, I used to force myself, if ever I was asking a question, I would force myself to start with, so I'd go, what? And that would make me have to then structure a question that was open. So if you can get yourself to do that, it's amazing how effective that is. So what or how, really, really useful open questions. Now, there is, of course, a 3rd open question, which is, or question starter, which is why. Okay, so why can be a very effective open question, but it can also be a really triggering question that creates defensiveness in your client. And the reason for that is because largely down to childhood. So most of us have had a childhood where some adult has asked us why we did something or why we didn't do something or why we're where we are, and it triggers you from childhood. So if you hear a why question, very often people will get defensive. So if I say to a client, for example, when I was working in corporate, if I said, well, why are you using that product? Let's say it's a competitor product. If I ask someone why they're using a product, they'll normally go into defensiveness mode. So they'll start justifying their previous decision. And all of a sudden, you can find yourself locking yourself out of an opportunity to talk about changing that product. Okay. So what I recommend with why questions is to be very deliberate about how and when you ask them. And the first way I think about it is, instead of saying, why are you using that product, and kind of almost getting the customer to become entrenched in it, what I want is for that customer to reverse out of that decision. So I will say, rather than why are you using that product, I'll say, why are you looking to change? And that, even though it sounds like the same question, it has a completely different outcome from the customer's perspective, because they start to process, well, yeah, there's a lot of reasons why we're looking to change, and all of a sudden they start to list them. And then and that becomes, of course, your information that serves you, so that you can start to join up the dots between what you can do and what they're currently looking to change about their product or provider. And then the second time I ask a why question is to ignite motivation or passion in somebody. So I will ask the question. It might be something like, we're on this call, we're talking about this opportunity. I can see this is important to you. Would you mind telling me, why is it so important that you get this right? When you ask customers a question like that, they really, you kind of see the state change that happens. They kind of dig in and really give you information that's so much more powerful, because that is how we get below the surface with really good quality questioning. But we have to remember, why questions in those specific situations, not where it creates defensiveness for a client. So open questions get clients talking, allows you to elicit and surface much more information. Now, I said there was a third type of questions, because we're not going to cover closed questions. I said there was a third type of question, which was a probing question. Now, with probing questions, there's a few ways you can do this, but I'm a simple guy. I try and keep things simple. So I'm like, 2 options for open questions, what or how, 2 options for probing questions. Those 2 options are, so the first one is, what else? If I ask a customer a question, what are you looking to get from this meeting? And they say, oh, I was just interested, to be honest. Well, just interested to meet you, right? Then that doesn't really give you a lot of information. So I would say, that was great that you are, interested to meet me. What else is important to you as we go through this meeting? And really what you're looking to do is kind of surface more information. That's a question that takes you broader, okay? It takes you broader and gets more information. The second way to probe is to go deeper. And to go deeper, we would say, so if someone said, I was just interested to meet you, I might say, oh, thanks for that. It's great that you're interested to meet me. Tell me a bit more about why you're interested to meet me. Tell me more, or what else? So what else goes broad? Tell me more goes deep. And it's a really nice way of just expanding out, so that when you ask a customer a question, if you don't get the answer, sometimes there's this pressure. You feel like, oh, I need to go on to something else, right? And actually we don't. We need to stay where we are and allow the customer to continue to process their thinking. And we do that through probing questions. And I talked about open, closed, probing questions. I was with a client team this week and had a really interesting conversation about open and closed questions. And what was fascinating, I'd never thought about it this way before, but because most people default to closed questions, early in the conversation, we were doing some role plays. They were doing role plays and they kept accidentally asking closed questions. And then towards the end of the sales process in this role play, when they should have asked a closed question, like, is this something you'd like to go ahead with? Okay. They asked, the person doing the role play asked an open question. So what else do you need from me today to make a decision? Or actually, what else do you need from me today, was what she said. And the customer said, oh, well, it's not that simple. You know, it's going to take time, and it's going to. And I asked an open question that actually kind of almost derailed the whole sale, because instead of closing, they opened. And we have to remember, you know, the reason that the questions go where they go is because they fit alongside the process. And that kind of brings me to the customer journey again. We've got our customer journey. Open questions go at the start when we're in discovery, really trying to open up the customer and get them to think clearly. We probe as we're trying to understand what is the need they have, what's the solution we provide, how do they join up. So we do that through probing. And then at the end, when we want commitment, we ask a closed question like, is this something you'd like to go ahead with? Or should we get started today? Or you know, so we ask a closed question that gains commitment, moves and progresses the customer forward. And then the final thing I want to talk about in terms of questioning is just to think about problem or solution questions. And I want you to think about this in your own context, right? So when you, this is like just something I found on online. So when you win $10 or £10, we're in the US. We're not in the US. We're in the UK. When you, well, actually, Alex, you're in South Africa, I believe. So, but when you win £10 or $10, right? You kind of, oh yeah, okay, that's okay, that's cool. When you lose $10, it's like, where the hell's that money gone? How did I lose that? Where we have this real, really high negative association with loss, and a relatively low association with winning. And actually, it's really interesting. It's kind of mapped on this loss aversion chart. What it shows us is that loss disutility is 2 times greater than gain utility. And you can plot it on a map. So if you lose £1,000 or points, it actually feels like 2,000. When you gain 1,000, it feels like 1,000, right? And when you start to think about that, you know, if you won £1,000 overnight, you'd be pleased. If you found that your account had been hacked and someone had taken £1,000 from you, it would feel so much worse than if you'd gained the positive association of gaining £1,000. And what we find is that it's the same with customers. So people will do far more to avoid pain, a problem, an issue in their business than they will to gain an uplift or an improvement. And it doesn't mean that we don't use both angles of the equation. It means we should use both and recognize that actually often solving a problem that's costing the customer money or costing them time or inefficiency is actually going to get much more leverage on them than trying to just focus on here's the solution or the improvement. And again, some of these things sound like, yeah, that's straightforward, it's obvious, but sometimes we get so consumed by the product and we can do this for you, it'll have this beneficial output or outcome. Absolutely right to present that, but we should also be asking questions about the current state, the problems and the impact of the problem for the client, so that they start to really feel that loss disutility, because that's where leverage comes in the sales process. So that's the final part of the playbook. Once you've got the questioning models in place, make sure that we're leveraging both. And I've one of the things that I did early on in my business was kind of collate and pull together all of the different documents that I'd used over the years and create some new versions of them and pulled them into this single document I call the Inspire Sales Toolkit. And the toolkit is a single file that has all of these different documents that we run through as we go through our program. Those of you who are on the program, you'll know this. Within that document, there is this needs phase where we've got high quality questions. And in there are a couple of documents. One is an example document of all the types of high quality questions we could be asking. So some good examples of how questions, what questions, if you could change one thing, if we prioritize one thing questions, and why questions. Really nice document that gives you a kind of starter for 10 around some of the types of questions you could and should be asking your clients. And then, of course, there's also a blank template, so you can take some of those and start to adjust and improve the questions that you ask as well. So I'll happily, today, after today's session has finished, I'll send you not only a link to the recording, but I'll send you the slides. I'll also attach that high quality questions document, so that you can, if you want to map out your high quality questions, you've got an opportunity to do so. Okay, we are at 13:33. I feel like I've talked enough for the time being. Let me stop sharing my screen. So I'm interested to give you a chance to process this. There are always three elements of learning. First element is, being trained on something, learning something from somebody. Second element is talking about it and processing it with other people. Third element is hearing what other people are planning to do as a result. So they're the three elements of change we look at today. So I'm going to open up some breakout rooms. I think we're probably going to go with three. We are going to go with three. So we'll have a couple of rooms of two, and then we'll have a four. There'll be 1 4 as well. So hopefully gives you a chance to meet some new people and have a good conversation. I'm just checking that you're all with somebody that you probably have never met before. Yeah, I think you're all with someone you haven't met before. That's good. So once you're in the room, quick introduction, say hi to everybody, and then just talk about, share what are your key insights, what are some of the key actions or things you're going to take away from today's session. We'll have 10 minutes in the room, then I'll bring you back. We'll take a bit of feedback from each group. So if there's someone in each group wouldn't mind just maybe scratching down a few notes, or at least listening in so that you can remember, and then we'll take some feedback, a couple of final slides, and then we'll wrap up today's session. So let me open the rooms. Enjoy your conversations, folks, and I'll see you back here in about 10 minutes. Breakout sessions. So I'd love to hear what you talked about, key takeaways from today. Let's go room by room. So we'll start with Amy, Andrew, and Lee. What were your key discussion points and takeaways, other than Andrew trying to sell you my book?
I think our conversation was very consistent. I think, we firstly found it a little bit staggering that 87% of customers say that salespeople don't really understand their real needs. That was a bit of a light bulb moment, a bit scary. Andrew commented it'd be interested to know what was the data source for that, Justin. So if you could share that, that would be insightful.
And I saw that note in the chat. I've got it here. I'll share it on the email.
Yeah. I think the other comment that Andrew made was as well about the inverted funnel was a bit of another light bulb moment. All three of us commented that we've previously done slides with the funnel the other way, and it clearly doesn't work that way in sales. The probing open questions, always a good reminder. And I confessed to using a sort of why question only yesterday in front of a large customer, and they got really defensive. And it reinforced their decision to go with a competitor. And as soon as you say it, you can go, oh, shit. But again, it's always a good reminder in these type of sessions in terms of what we should not be doing. So they were, I think, the key headlines. Amy, Andrew, anything I've missed?
No, I think you nailed it.
No.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Lee, and thanks for your honesty as well. Those, it was a long time before I learned the problems with why questions. So yeah, it's not obvious, not an obvious thing until someone tells you, and then you look back and go, oh, that's why that happened with that customer. Yeah. No, thanks, Lee. That's great. So room 2 was Joe, Kirsty, and Dorcas. We'd like to share back from your conversation.
I didn't see Dorcas in there. Was she hiding in a corner?
Oh,
I thought it was just
you and Kirsty, was it?
We had a good chill wag. We didn't
she was
talk
definitely in there
about you, but we were interested in each other, really, to be honest. But if Kirsty's happy, I would just say that personally, I need to just keep practicing what you preach, Justin, because it's very easy to go, oh yeah, that makes so much sense, and then go away and then just carry on doing what you've been doing before, or start to do a bit of it and then get sidetracked in the busyness. So I've got a little, my challenge this week is to practice the open question. So in any environment, whether I'm at home, at work, or in my dental surgery, or in my social enterprise, I'm going to go with the what or how to get a wow. So that's how I'm going to remember it.
Nice.
So I will keep texting that message to myself all day long. So when I get distracted and forget about it,
I like that, Joe. I might adopt that. What or how to get a wow. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
yeah. You're opening.
And you know, there's the odd occasion where, you know, when you sometimes you get someone that just talks non-stop. We all know those people. Sometimes you might want to pivot to close questions, just to kind of keep them on point and slow, you know,
That
soften
is
them
a
into the right
very
mood.
useful tool. Yes, we've got some patients you can't get out the door.
Yeah,
You know, you're thinking we're already 10 minutes late. We need to get you back out to reception.
yeah,
Good shout, Justin. I like
yeah,
that.
yeah. Have you got
Yeah.
everything you need? Brilliant. See you next time.
Yeah. So, well, normally I just get a coat, but you can't do that in the summer.
No.
So Kirsty was saying that their plans have all totally changed this year. The funding has been withdrawn, and so they're having to take a different tack and redesign the product, basically. So this is where you're questioning to find out what is the need and what's the best product will be really helpful.
Yeah.
Is that right, Kirsty?
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, I had a bit of an easy ride because I was selling grants for the kind of first few months of my role, and it's quite easy to sell free money. And then they cancelled the 100% grant, so I was then teeing people up for an 80% grant, but you know, getting some traction. And then the government cancelled that as well. So we are now in a position where nobody can afford decarbonisation engineering, or at least schools, which was our primary market. And we are now having to cut down to sort of smaller chunks, essentially, you know, boiler upgrades, slightly dampening down on the net zero emissions, slightly much smaller kind of pots of money that we're going for.
Yeah.
A lot more volume to get.
I was going to say you need more volume in that case to offset the number.
And we've got a short runway because cash flow is running out. It's a small business, so it's yeah, it's kind of, there's a lot of
pressure.
Pressure, contributing factors, and I guess that pressure for me probably, because I'm as you know, marketing background, and I'm not your usual salesperson is what I'll say. On my sort of natural tendency will be to sort of rush in, maybe jump to like third base too quickly.
Yeah.
And so just remembering to ask lots of questions will help to uncover some of the opportunities that are smaller, but we need to kind of uncover as many of them as possible. So it will really help.
Yeah, wow. Well, good luck with it, Kirsty. It does sound like that's a high pressure environment. Sales is pressured already. When you've got that additional background and context, it's even more pressure.
Did I mention I'm the only salesperson as well?
Yeah, well, I knew that. Yeah, I knew that. Wow.
I need your email, Kirsty. Perhaps Justin can give it to me later on. But that's just made me think of one thing. Justin recommended a book. I believe it was Justin. I get all my book recommendations from Justin, I think. What you said there about asking questions will uncover the thing. Is that what's known as a black swan, Justin?
Oh yeah. Well, so it's you're thinking Never Split the Difference.
Yes, I am totally.
Chris Voss. It's a very good book.
Yeah.
It's a very good book. Second only to Inspire, Influence, Sell, of course. Brilliant. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Kirsty. Good luck with that. Our final group was Alex, Lisa, and Mike, who'd like to share from your discussion.
I'll share from our discussion. So
thanks, Alex.
I think you're welcome. So a few things that came up is so I made the comment that I'm on the software side for transport companies. So I worked in the transport industry, and I'm on the software side as the supplier of the software. Yeah. And what I find myself doing sometimes is I make the assumption that everyone works the same, like every customer, every client has the same operations, which is actually a fallacy. Everyone does it their own way. Yeah. And by going into that with that mindset is dangerous, because you can quickly, very easily miss an opportunity. You can you can sort of lead yourself out the door by making the wrong assumptions. Another thing that was mentioned is that we need practicing or preparing for a session. So all these questions are, it'll be better, it'll come across much better if you prepare for it. So doing some preparation beforehand and not going in and trying to shoot at the hip with all the correct questions, but actually do a bit of research on who you're targeting, who your client is that you're going to see. And then by being prepared, those questions should come more easily, or you can already have your list of questions to actually help you ask those correct ones and get the correct answers. And then the last thing I think that Lisa mentioned is, it's almost like we must become kids again with just asking non-stop questions instead of just accepting, okay, no is a no, just like keep on, but why, except no, why is not the best one, but how rather.
Yeah. I like that, actually, that childlike curiosity, because we lose it as we get adults. As we become adults, it gets trained out of us, doesn't it? Drilled out of us. And actually, returning back to that, do you know what? If someone gives me an answer, it's okay to question the answer, or to question further, or to go a little bit deeper. You don't have to take the first thing you're told. You can probe and tease away at it. And that's very often, I found that later on in my career when I was better at it, that you can create opportunities just from the questions that you ask. If you don't ask the questions, the opportunity is never present in the mind of the customer. So we create that through the questions that we ask. Yeah, love that. Thanks, Alex. Brilliant discussions. Thank you, everybody. I'm conscious we're at 5:02. I want to do a couple of things. First of all, can we take a quick selfie for LinkedIn? Yeah. No funny faces, please. So if you can come on camera, appreciate some of you can't, but if you can come on camera, I'd love you to come on camera. And I'll give you a countdown just so that so that you've got a chance to do your hair and make yourself look gorgeous. But you all look very gorgeous anyway. So I'm going to give you a countdown. So we'll go. Ready? Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. Oh, hold on. Let me go again. There we go again, because Amy's come on. Hold on. 3, 2, 1. Oh, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you very much. And if you're okay, I will use this. I'll do a LinkedIn post about the session on Monday, because it's a bit late on a Friday now, but I'll do a LinkedIn post on Monday. And if you're okay, I'll tag you in to say that you joined, and thanks very much for your contribution and input. So final thing, and then I'm going to close because we are at 6 minutes. 56 minutes past. Let me do one final thing, and then we'll close. So all I was going to say was, let me just share my screen. I think we're all connected on LinkedIn. If you're not connected with me on LinkedIn and you'd like to be, there's a QR code. Give that a scan, and you'll automatically find me. Put in a connection request, and I'll say yes. If you've got any questions about today, I'm going to send you the recording, the slides. I'll send you the document, the high quality questions document. If you've got any questions on that, just drop me an email, come back to me. If you want to have a chat at some point, feel free to be in touch, and I'm always open to new conversations. Feel free to do that. But that's everything for today's session. Let me give you 3 minutes before your 2 o'clock. Say huge thanks, everyone, for joining me. Really appreciate you being here. Have a wonderful weekend when you finish your Friday afternoon, and hopefully see you at the next session. Thank you. All right, pleasure. Thanks, everybody. Really good to see you.
Justin. Thanks,
Pleasure,
everyone.
my pleasure.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care. See you. Bye. Bye.